The Disappearance of Maura Murray. Maura Murray is a real-life story that has garnered significant attention due to her mysterious disappearance. In the crisp autumn air of February 9, 2004, Maura Murray was driving down Interstate 93 in Haverhill, New Hampshire. The snow-covered trees cast long shadows across the highway, and the distant hum of engines could be heard from passing vehicles. She had just left a routine visit to her boyfriend's apartment in Massachusetts and was headed back home to Burlington, Vermont. Her destination was her family's property at 72 Ledgebrook Road. As she navigated through the winding road, Maura noticed that the GPS on her phone showed an alternate route taking her further inland than usual. Despite feeling uneasy about deviating from her planned path, she decided to follow it. The journey became increasingly isolating as the miles flew by and the trees grew taller, their branches swaying in the wind. After a few hours of driving, Maura reached her destination, but something didn't feel right. She checked into a nearby Motel 6 under an assumed name and lay down on the bed, feeling exhausted from the long drive. Her phone had no signal, and the motel room was basic and plain. The next morning, Maura woke up early to begin her day. She decided to take another route back home, using the GPS to navigate through the forested roads of New Hampshire. The landscape was serene, with pine trees towering above, their needles rustling in the gentle breeze. Her thoughts drifted to her boyfriend and the argument they had discussed just a few days ago. As she continued driving, Maura noticed that the roads became increasingly narrow, winding deeper into the woods. Her car's GPS showed no signal for miles, and the silence was oppressive. The landscape seemed different, almost eerie, and Maura felt a growing sense of unease. Suddenly, her vehicle skidded to a stop in the middle of nowhere. Maura tried the engine, but it refused to start. Panic began to set in as she realized she was lost without phone signal or GPS. She rummaged through her bag for supplies, water, snacks, and her first aid kit. As night started to fall, Maura huddled under a tree branch, her eyes scanning the darkness for any signs of life. The forest was quiet, broken only by the occasional hooting of owls. Her fear turned into desperation as the hours ticked by without any sign of rescue or rescue vehicles. The next morning, Maura set off again, following another winding road that seemed to lead nowhere. As she drove through a small town called Haverhill, her heart raced with each passing car. She couldn't shake off the feeling that someone was watching her, but there were no signs of life outside her vehicle. As the hours passed, Maura found herself in a situation where she had lost all sense of direction and time. Her phone still had no signal, making it impossible to call for help or reach anyone. Panic took hold, fueled by fear, hunger, and thirst. Days turned into weeks as Maura struggled to stay alive. She scavenged what she could from the motel room, surviving on berries and water collected from her car's bottle. Her mind became clouded with hallucinations, and the isolation of being lost in the woods took its toll. She began to wonder if anyone was looking for her. Then, one morning, Maura heard a sound. Cars driving down the road, headlights shining through the darkness. She rushed out of her hiding place, hoping against hope that it might be help finally arriving. But as she approached the cars, she realized they were police officers. They were confused and concerned looking, with no signs of recognition. They asked Maura where she was going and what she had been doing. Her words were laced with a mix of fear and despair as she tried to explain her situation. The officers seemed sympathetic, but baffled by the remote location and lack of evidence. They promised to radio for backup and drove off, leaving Maura alone once again. As days turned into weeks, Maura's hopes began to dwindle. Her body weakened due to malnutrition and dehydration, yet she held on to a spark of hope that someone would eventually find her. But as the seasons changed and autumn became winter, Maura realized that time might be running out for her. The final days were spent in solitude, huddled by the remains of what little food and warmth she had managed to salvage. The forest seemed darker now, full of menacing shadows that lurked around every corner. She could feel eyes watching her, waiting to strike. And then, on a day indistinguishable from any other, Maura vanished into the woods. No bodies were ever found, No signs of foul play or natural causes discovered, and no definitive explanation given for her disappearance. The mystery of what happened to Maura Murray remains one of the most enduring unsolved cases in American true crime history.